consistency, meaning no slipping. You've been right there from beginning. The story been written. Gotta remind myself when that doubt try to kick in. Came too far to be stagnant. Foot on demons' necks, letting them have it. We fall from average, cut from different fabric. The garment on my God, fish snub, no dragging. I came from savage to 40-day fasting. The war is on your mind, but your mind is on your caption. Capture the minds of the fragile.
We're starting in about 3 more minutes.
Only if you knew who you was actual. What's it like wearing the crown when it ain't matching you? If you were king of the kingdom, you need it in your castle.
If we're being honest, I haven't been that honest. You deserve much better. I've been living selfishly. Put childish things away. Be who God called me to be. I'm breaking her while it's breaking me. If I'm ready to face why she lonely, she been calling on me, ain't no answer. I need to repent cause I'm dead wrong. Cause I don't see nobody else. I don't see nobody else. You call on me and I'll be there. I said it's up to me to make sure I get you right. It's up to me, I gotta leave right. When I look at you, I see forever. Despite what God has still, I put the effort. Give me your hand as I lead this prayer. Lord, need you now, can you be the center? Show us the way, Lord, we need your presence. Your evidence that we can get through this right. Look from the sleepless nights. Give you all this pain inside, cause Lord, this ain't right. You place this man in my life. You put me right by his side, so I can't deny it, no.
All right, welcome to what I believe is actually our 4th edition only of the hours, and it's taken a little bit of a genesis into an evolution here, and so want to kick off the hours today with a little bit of our pre-practice. We'll structure the hours real similar to how we structure our SAVI practices, with a pre-practice and 4 quarters. So a couple of announcements first for our pre-practice. First and foremost, I've shifted to doing this more as a podcast, a one-person podcast, and collecting the requests, the questions, the video for feedback and breakdowns prior to the hours on Thursday. The reason for that is that really allows me to spend time preparing. I was actually up last night writing about and listing out exactly what I wanted to share so I could do it in a very succinct way, as opposed to doing live reactions on the Hours podcast. So if you want live feedback and live reactions, you can get that in our community chat, or you can go to a commit level for the month, and we can do some one-on-one coaching, some one-on-one feedback. But this really allows me to select the questions that come in from email, that come in from our app community chat, come in from Twitter, come in from in-person conversations, and identify, okay, here's what I think would serve the community the best, and here is the most succinct way that I can do it. So anyone that does jump on live, I welcome it. you can ask questions in the chat box and get some direction, or direct me to go deeper on certain things. But I'm going to not have people on live, on video on the call. And the second reason for that is I really do want this to become a podcast content. And for now, the podcast is actually going to live here in YouTube, so that you can just replay it back, audio or video, when you're in your car, when you're working out, when you're on the bike, whatever. Want to really invest back in all of our SAVI Coaching community members that are investing in themselves. So you'll get an hour, you'll get an hour of great content. Great. I hope it's great. You'll get an hour of great content every week. And I want to really prepare to deliver great content. Lastly, really would encourage everyone to continue to check out the drill book in the app. And specifically during this off season, check out the player workouts. I'm adding 1 to 2 player workouts every single week, and continue to request, like, hey, how would you work with this type of a player? How would you develop the ability to beat one defender off the bounce? And I'm working out with players of all levels, from the youth level to I have a couple of pros in the gym today. And we can give you examples of all things. There's so much on the player development side. And I will just share this. Most team coaches that I've observed and been around are weakest on player development. If you think of like a really good trainer, someone that trains players to be more skilled, make better reads, have more basketball IQ, that's where most team coaches are weakest. They make teams better, but they don't necessarily make players better. And it's honestly an absolute cheat code if you can become a great player development teacher. If you can't, or if you are not able to invest in that yourself, then go out and find it. It would be the most important thing for you to invest in an assistant or someone on your staff, someone that just really wants to embrace, and then coach them up into just consuming everything they can about being great with player development. But be careful. There's a lot of useless stuff out there. And hopefully this can be a place that can help you or your staff become really, really good at player development. Okay, last thing. Please continue to submit requests, both of what you want me to cover here, as well as what guests you might want me to have on. I've been doing something with my SAVI Academy staff here in Phoenix, where we've been doing weekly lunch and learns. And it's just 20 minutes where we've been developing ourselves as coaches. And every other week, I've brought in a guest. And it's been really cool to actually realize what amazing friends I have in the game of basketball that have so much to offer. And I've brought in some, just amazing teachers, college coaches, leaders, culture specialists. And so I want to provide that for you guys as well. And that's kind of with the shift to making this even more of a podcast style, is to just add extreme value to you. Okay, that's all of our pre-practice here for the hours. Let's dive into our first quarter. We got 4 quarters in a game. We got 4 quarters in a SAVI practice. We got 4 quarters in the hours podcast. And we'll go for about an hour every day, but won't be tied to it. Some days will be a little bit less. Some days will be a little bit more. All right, quarter one. Quarter one today is about how to teach better. This is your teach better tip for the week. Here it is. Know what time you're coaching in. Know what time you're coaching in. So this comes out of our lunch and learn, actually, with my friend Micah Mills yesterday, where we had our staff asking some questions. And one of our newer staff members, who has a great heart, great energy, asked this question. And he said, man, how do you not get caught up in the midst of the game, like living and dying with each shot if a shot goes in, or getting frustrated by a bad call, or being disappointed in a very costly turnover? We were talking about how to direct our energy to positive things. And he said, well, how do you just not be a human being and feel the disappointment or the anger or the frustration? And what we uncovered was this: is it's hard to say don't react, just like it's hard to don't think of a white horse right now. Don't think of a white horse, right? It's really hard. Like our mind doesn't really understand do or don't. How we interpret is just subject matter. And so it's kind of like quitting smoking. It's really hard to kick a bad habit by just not doing a thing and by replacing it by doing nothing. Oh, I really want to smoke a cigarette right now. I won't. I'll do nothing instead. That's not how you quit smoking. You quit smoking by replacing the negative habit with a positive one. I have the urge to smoke. Okay, instead I'll go make a green drink or a smoothie, or instead, I'll drop and do 10 push-ups, or instead I will text someone a piece of encouragement, whatever. It's habit replacement. So the same thing with trying to eliminate bad habits in coaching, the habit of being reactive and resulting as a coach, like, oh, I'm very attached to the result. Did the shot go in? Not, was it the right shot? And so instead of just removing, we need to replace. And let me bring this back full circle. The replacement is picking your time instead of just not resulting. You got to pick the time that your perspective is in. So what I mean by this is there's 3 tenses, right? You got your past, your present, and your future. Think about which tense you operate in the most as a coach. Past would be defined as shot didn't go in, and so you're disappointed, or shot did go in, so you're like, oh, elated, I'm excited. Or player makes a mistake, don't do that, don't dribble to the corner, don't pick up your dribble, don't be weak with the ball, right? That's all in the past. You're reacting to something that previously occurred. Most past tense coaching, most reaction to something that previously occurred, tends to be your least effective and impactful coaching. Yeah, there's some impact to it, right? But especially in a game, it's going to be your least impactful because you're responding to something that just happened. You're usually distracting your players from performing in the moment. It's usually your perspective of it's going to be very different from their perspective of it. You don't have a film, right? There's emotions tied to the past, both by you and by your players. It's going to be the least impactful coaching is when you go in the past. Well, the other place you can be, which is a little bit more positive, is you can be in the present. And it's a little bit more positive, but it's still really hurtful because most of the time when you're in the present, you're a joystick coach. Like joystick coach means you're trying to control everything that's happening on the floor by your players. Like, shoot it, you're open, right? Or pass to Sally, get back on defense. If you've got to be in the present in joystick coaching, this is going to hurt a little bit to hear. If you got to be in the present in joystick coach, you haven't done a very good job in training or a good enough job in training. And I say that having right now coaching my daughter's youth teams, and I find myself joystick coaching more than I would ever want to. Specifically in every time the ball goes out of bounds, I have to remind them, hi. We have one thing that we do in inbounds, one formation that we race out of. We're supposed to run to a spot, tag our base, and race somewhere and get open. And I have to joystick them to get high. I'm in the present. And so that's just feedback from me. Okay, Tyler, you have not prioritized in training. You haven't established the standard well enough yet that it's automatic that they can race and transition to high every time the ball goes out of bounds. I haven't spent enough time on it for them to have it as a habit. That's just feedback for me. So I have to be in the present and joystick. Now I need to reallocate time to it or not worry about it. But if you're in the present, you're joysticking. And that's the next least effective way to actually teach better, to actually have an impact. And it also will get you pretty reactive as well when you're in the moment. Okay, the last tense or the last time that you could be in is the future. And this is the most effective one. It's also the hardest one to live in. So in the future, what you're doing is you are looking for moments to remind in advance what players should be attempting to do. Now, each one limits you more. It causes you to simplify more. If you're in the past, you have a near infinite number of things that you can correct, address, and respond to emotionally. There's so many, right? If you're in the past, and you have a much bigger period of time to select from, and you can hold on to things for a really long time as a coach. Okay. Then if you're in the present, you have a smaller selection of things, like what's actually happening right now to respond to, right? But things are constantly happening. And so you have a large amount of things to react to as well. But when you live in the future, you don't know what's going to be happening. And you have to be very intentional and selective. And so you're actually talking less and thinking more and preparing more and selecting the thing that you think will have the greatest impact. And when you prepare your team, your players, your coaches, your the parents in your program, when you prepare people for how we will respond or how we will act or what we will do in a situation in the future, you actually have the greatest impact. Isn't it interesting? Like when you narrow your focus, your impact is greater. It's like focusing a laser or energy or sunlight. Like when you focus sunlight through a magnifying glass on a single point, it gets really hot and can start a fire. But when that same sunlight is hitting many different points, it's not as intense and can't start a fire. Your job as a coach is to narrow your focus to the future so that your impact can start a fire, can kindle a flame that's going to actually have a massive change. Okay, that is teach better. So I don't want to just move off it. At the end of each quarter, I'm going to ask this question, and I would encourage you to consider this question. What did you like? What did you learn? Or what will you improve because of that information? What did you like? What did you learn? What will you improve because of that information? Based on what time you spend most of your focus on when you're coaching, the past, the present, or the future. You can only change one of them. You'll be a better coach. If you live in the future, you'll be much calmer. And have time for this? Yeah. It's really hard to coach in the future if you care about looking like a good coach. It's really hard to coach in the future if you care about looking like a good coach. So, coach, whether you know it or not, you are really, really attached to what the product looks like on the floor when your team plays and there's fans in the stands, whatever level you're at. You feel completely attached to it. And when your players on the floor are making mistakes, missing shots, you're losing, they're playing bad, whatever, you feel like you look like a bad coach. And so you try to go out there and fix it right there. And you don't want to sit down and let the rice cook. You don't want to sit down and think about what needs to happen in the future. Okay. You want to yell things like, "What are you thinking? That's not what I told you," because you want everybody else to know that they're doing things different than what you think they should be doing. That is living out of time as well, coaching out of time as well. And it just makes you a worse coach. Only live in the future and think about what you can do to remind them in advance. Okay, that took a bit of time, but I think it is imperative. It's what it means to be a savvy coach, and that's what the hours is about. It's about spending hours together, sharing lessons I've learned about what it means to be savvy, what it means to be smart, tough, and clever, and the lessons I've learned from great coaches across all sports, across the globe, throughout a long career in the game of basketball. And I cannot wait for it to continue to be longer, and to continue to share it with you, coaches of all sports. All right, quarter two, that's the end of quarter one. You have hopefully written down or thought about what you liked, learned, or will improve from that. And we're just going to take baby steps together. All right, quarter two, what we're getting into right now is terminology time. One request that we got from SAVI coach Julie Ford this was from Brooke Bailey up in Idaho. Brooke said, "Hey, there is so much new terminology in the SAVI systems, and what does it all mean?" And so I could just say words for hours and try to define them. And so what I decided to do, because what we're going through right now in our cohort this month is race and space, is I decided to go through key terms and definitions for our race and space terminology over the next couple of weeks. And I'm going to break it up by layers. So I'm going to go through our 3 core layers and go through key terms and a quick definition of it. so that you can adopt the terminology. And I will preface it like this. Pick your own terms once you have a deep understanding of the concept. Before you have a deep understanding of the concept, I really, really think you just adopt these terms. I was on with a coach in Dallas who's taken over a new program, and they said that their goal, their desire is to get all of their coaches in their entire program from youth to middle school to high school all aligned, doing the same things and speaking the same language. I said, that's great. I can help you with that. He said, good, good, good. And I said, now you have to decide, do you want me to train you on what we do and you then train them? Or do you want me just to train everybody? And he said, oh, I need to think about that. And so he's thinking about it. But I sent him a follow-up email after talking about it. And I said, you know what? Year one, first year head coach, I honestly think the best thing you could do is have me just train everybody, because it's so hard to do everything as a head coach. And there's always breakage and loss in the game of telephone. And so it's imperative. Like, I think that if you're a coach and you're watching this and you're thinking about adopting a system, or you're thinking about putting in some of these SAVI methods, step one, just get everybody aligned on what we already do. And then once there's a deep understanding of it and people understand that green means this color and means that thing, then you can crowdsource or decide or make it your own. That would be my suggestion. So let's go ahead and dive in. I'm going through terms in the race and space, and I'm going rapid fire. Let me pull up my sheet here, and I'm going to do it by layer. So here we go. Terms. Layer one of the race and space is race the arc. So the first term is race. Now, why are these terms important? Because we talked about coaching intensives and we want to coach in the future. And so we want quick, short triggers that you can use from the bench in the midst of a practice or a game to remind what's coming next, right? To be in the future. And sometimes you got to shift into the present and use a quick trigger to remind what they should be doing right now without joysticking, right? Pick up the basketball and look to pass to the corner, then run a zoom action. That's way too long in the midst of a game. So we try to have quick triggers. So one trigger is just this: race. And race is the trigger for transition. The moment that we transition from defense to offense, every individual player is looking to win the race, beat their defender to the other end of the floor. It's an actual race. That's what race means. So we want to race between the arcs, win the race between the arcs. Every player, we have no rim runner in the race and space, and every player is a rim runner, because every player is trying to win the race against their defender, get behind the last defender. And any player that gets behind the last defender becomes the rim runner. They put pressure on the rim. If you don't win the race behind your defender, you don't put pressure on the rim, you run to your spot. That's what it means to race the arcs. Two, our terms of our transition roles. This tells players where they go if they can't win the race between the arcs. If they don't win the race between the arcs, they go and they lock down a spot. So we have two locks. Locks basically determine that you lock down the corner, you lock down the money spot. We designate a right and a left lock, so there's never any confusion. And then we have our dragon. Our dragon is the one that's going to drag behind the play. They're always going to be the last person to cross half court, and they drag behind the play to give the entire top of the key to the racker so that they can wait. Speaking of the racker's job is to get to the rack. That's why we call it a racker. They have to be your best player at getting to the rack and finishing at the rack against contact, and best ball handler. And then we have what we call a rabbit, sometimes shortened to bunny, okay? And the rabbit and bunny, their job is to actually be the first person to race. The rabbit's the first person to race. So oftentimes your rabbit won't actually be an enthusiastic defensive rebounder. They're more going to be the one that's going to bolt out. Your rabbit doesn't have to be big or small or whatever. They just have to be the one that's really, really fast and can get out behind the last defender. That's your rabbit. And the rabbit goes and sits on the porch immediately after getting out, because most of the time, here's why they sit on the porch. Most of the time, the rabbit should get behind the last defender and should put pressure on the rim. But if they don't get the ball, they go and sit on the porch, because that's going to be the nearest place for them to lock down a spot and create space in our offense. I like the rabbit to be really long and athletic whenever it's possible. Okay, some more terms. Peak. Peak is the moment your fingertips touch leather, the moment any player touches the basketball, even if it's not leather. The moment they touch the basketball, their eyes rip to their rim. And when you're peaking, you're not doing anything else. When you're peaking, you're not putting the ball on the ground. When you're peaking, you're not faking. When you're peaking, you're not moving. You're getting your body balanced to peak. We peak with urgency. We're urgent to pass, because if anyone does get behind that last defender, we want to pass it up. But when we peak, we see everything we need to see on the court. We see if we have the pass. We see if we have a lane to break out and dribble. We see if there's a defender right there, so it eliminates travels. In the habit forming, once we get into the scoring area, into what we call the read zone, which is the term we'll get to in a moment. Once we get into the scoring area, a peak can determine, do I have a shot? Do I have an advantage to hunt? Okay, speaking of hunt, hunt is what we call dribbling. We don't say dribble, we say hunt. We want to hunt with the dribble. Now we can hunt without the dribble too, but right now we're talking about hunting with the dribble. The only reason to dribble is if you have a chance at a 9. That's it. That's the only reason to dribble. We hunt 9s with the dribble. A 9 is a wide open layup, which we'll get into in the next one a little bit. So when we're dribbling, we're hunting the moment, because of our skill set or that defender or the spacing or whatever. The moment that we don't have a good chance of getting a 9, we're picking up the basketball and we're getting rid of it. We hunt for a 9. Now, our most skilled player will probably hunt longer and make some direction changes, whereas our least skilled player will dribble less. We hunt for a 9. A bolt. The bolt starts the race. The bolt starts the race. So if you want to get better at racing, get better at bolting. Bolting is like named after Usain Bolt. It's the first 3 steps that a sprinter would take out of the blocks. Head down, sprinting. You can always tell a good racing team by freeze framing the video the moment they get possession of the basketball. And if every player without the basketball is bolting head down, they're probably a pretty good racing team. But if everyone's head up looking back at the ball, they're probably not a good racing team. They probably won't win the race. We all know the races tend to be won with who starts first. So a bolt is a skill that helps you race better. A breakout. A breakout is a type of a dribble. It's the first 1 to 3 dribbles someone takes after they peak. Everyone needs to be trained to break out in the race and space offense. And once they get a steal or a defensive board, they peak and then break out. Why do they break out? To hunt. What are they hunting? A 9. When do they pass the ball? When they don't have a chance of getting a 9. And usually that pass will then go to the racker, unless it's the racker that was breaking out. All right. Those are, let me give you 3 more terms. Gosh, this is good. So 3 more terms. 1 would be 7, 11, and cross the street. Yeah, those are good terms for this layer as well. All right, so 7-second game. Our goal in the race in space is to get a great shot. I won't talk about shot selection scale yet. Is to get a great shot in the first 7 seconds of the possession. Every player without the ball should either be at the rim or in their spot within 5 seconds of the transition, within 5 seconds of getting the ball. That then gives us the 2 seconds for the racker to get themselves a great shot or kick for a great shot. That's the 7-second game. Our goal is to get as many shots as we can in the first 7 seconds. 11-second game. If the ball can't hunt in the first 7 seconds, because that's when the defense is most disorganized. That's when we get in what we traditionally call fast breaks or transition, right? But if the ball can't hunt a 9 inside the arc in the first 7 seconds, then we immediately transition to our 11-second game. Our 11-second game is our first scripted action, okay? It's a transition. We have 7 seconds to race the arcs and try to get something great. But then the reason we didn't get something great usually is because the ball didn't get inside the 3-point line, didn't actually get to hunt. And if it didn't get inside the 3-point line, if the ball didn't get to hunt, then we've got 4 seconds, 7 seconds to 11 seconds to initiate our first best action with our best players. And that is usually scripted as to what we're going into for our 11-second action. And that can change based on opponent, personnel in the game, quarter of the game. You know, the defense that the opponent is in, script that first 11-second action. And the reason we script that 11-second action is the same reason that we race. We race for an advantage so that the ball can hunt. We go into our action for an advantage so that the ball can hunt. we play according to the same principles every single time. So that's a 7-second game and 11-second game. And I believe that is all of our terms for layer 1. Okay. I'm going to do less terms for layer 2 just for the sake of time, because we only have 4 minutes left in our second quarter before halftime here. And of course, the second layer of the race of space is space and hunt. And all of this information in depth with examples and the drills and way to train it is all in our race and space course. Right now, this podcast is only for subscribers, but every once in a while, I'll probably put one out publicly. So if this is one of those, just head to SAVICoach.com and you can get our app, join our membership, and get access to all of our courses if you want to learn the SAVI systems and you want to learn how to coach like a SAVI coach. All right. Space and hunt. The goal of this layer is to give often space to breathe. We want to, and they all build on each other. With the ball, we want to hunt 9s, but now we're talking about what do you do without the ball? Without the ball, we want to hunt space. Space is what we're looking to get without the basketball. And I'll give you a couple of terms. So high and wide. High and wide are our spots, okay? We want to be higher, multiple steps outside of the 3-point line, playing well outside of the 4-point line. That's what high means. And wider means we want to leave the top of the key open as often as possible. That's not a spot that we want to fill very often. And the reason we want to be as wide as we can on what we call attack spots, which are wide slots, the reason to be as wide as we can is because with that spacing, we don't have to cut or create actions to create double wide driving gaps. They're already built in for us. And so instead of having to pause and wait for movement to create double wide driving gaps, like a shallow cut or something like that, they're already there. So the ball can click. Click. Click is what we call a quick pass, a 0.5 pass. Click, 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 click. Flow. Flow is what we call our half-court offense. Flow is what we call our half-court offense. So this would be like a verbal trigger from the bench as well, right? Flow, 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 flow. And usually you would use flow to remind in advance that the ball needs to move. When the ball's sticking on the dribble, when the ball's sticking on being held, we're not flowing. The ball needs to click and flow. And when the ball clicks, eventually we get an advantage catch and we can play into our advantage game. So clicks create flow. Flow is flow like water. Take the path of least resistance. Flow reminds everyone on the court that we want to do easy things and not hard things, like water flows. Water flows downhill. It doesn't flow uphill. Okay, that's what it means for a savvy coach to play downhill. Playing downhill doesn't mean towards the rim, like traditional basketball terminology. Playing downhill means we flow like water. We take the easy stuff until eventually the easy stuff leads to great stuff. Exit cut. Exit cut. Anytime you end a drive or a hunt and don't shoot it, you need to exit as quickly as you got in. And we always exit through a corner, often the opposite corner, whichever corner is space. Lock and unlock. Lock means you are locked in your space. When you have great space without the ball, you stay still. You unlock when the ball stops hunting. We stay locked to see what the ball is going to do. Then we're unlocked when the ball starts hunting. There's a lot of ways that the ball communicates it's not hunting, but we go into that deep into, of course. Barkley. Barkley is a way to be patient at the end of your drive. So we turn drives that don't result in wide open layups into Barkleys. A Barkley is a dribbled into post up, and we do a lot of training of those Barkleys. That's in the course as well. Blast and burn. Blast is a cut towards open space outside the 3-point line. Burn is a cut towards open space to the rim. And burns are back cuts. They're burning the back of a defender's head. And blasts are face cuts. So blast and burn are our terms for face cuts and back cuts, but a little bit more specifically inside and outside the arc. Dance. So dance is what we would have someone do towards the basketball in the middle of the floor. So you would dance towards the basketball, maybe from the porch, maybe from a post, maybe even from a lock spot in the corner. But when you dance to the world or the middle of the floor, world is the logo free throw line nail area. And that's another term. Okay, that is layer 2. It's 8:30. Wow. Okay, I'm going to go real quick, layer 3, because I want to get through this terminology for Brooke and all the people that were asking. Layer 3, terms. shots and reads. So I'm going to do very, very quickly shot selection scale. 9 is a wide open layup. 8 is a foul drawn. 7 is a wide open off the catch 3 by a green light shooter. A 6 is an off the dribble 3 by a green light shooter. Now, there's a different green light method for off the catch 3s and off the dribble 3s. Of course, less people can shoot off the dribble 3s, but that's a 6 is an off the dribble 3. A 5 is a so-so shot. 5s are floaters, pull-up jumpers, and some people can shoot those, but not everybody can. It's just any sort of so-so shot, highly contested stuff at the rim. It's a 5. It's so-so. 4 is a kill switch. Kill switch is at the end of the shot clock, end of the game, end of a quarter, whatever. It's like you didn't have a choice. You had to get the shot off. And a 3 is basically just like a mark of shame. A 3 is a third grade shot. When we hold up a 3, it's because someone just decided I'm shooting it because I haven't gotten to shoot it in a long time. And it was not at a kill switch time. It's just a really, really poor shot. Only a third grader would take. Okay, reads. 5 read player, 4 read player, 3, 2, 1 read player. Okay, these are the terminologies. Now, the number is not the read. So a 2 read player doesn't tell us what your 2 reads are. In the race and space, everyone knows how many reads they're able to make and what reads they're able to make. 5 reads are for you as a coach to have language and articulation to each player, what they're able to do in the war games and what they're able to do in the real games. And then you also want to tell them, okay, what are they supposed to do in the sandbox? Now, if you want more information on war games and sandboxes, I'm not going to go into it right now, but there's in the Teach Better section of the app, there's a whole training on how to use war games and sandbox time to get improvement. Okay. But there's 5 different reads of players. I will go through the 5 reads real quick. 1 read, and I'll go in order of usually how they develop, but this isn't it. This isn't a 1 read player. This is just 1 read a player can have. A 9 read. Okay. They can take wide open layups. So they're able to read on cuts, on drives, in transition, offensive rebounds, whatever. They're able to read, can I dribble into, cut into, or catch into a wide open layup? I can make that read. I can hunt those things. So maybe it's a really, really big advantage long closeout, and they can drive that closeout and get themselves a 9. They're able to make that read. They're allowed to attack those things, but the moment it's not a 9, they're giving it up. The moment that it's not easy straight line drive and they've got to dribble against contact, it's not a 9, give it up. 7, they're able to read a closeout for a wide open off the catch 3. They have the skill set, the green light to make the 7 read. Okay, advantage. They're able to attack an advantage. So if they get like a shorter closeout, so they get a bit of an advantage, but it's not a big advantage for a 9, they can hunt the small advantage. They can hunt the small advantage. Okay. The next one, action. They're able to read actions. Now, you probably want to designate the action or actions each player is going to master, but they can read actions. They're able to use actions. Now, there's some players you don't want involved in actions as the ball handler, as the decision maker, right? And so they wouldn't have the action read yet. Then finally, ISOs. They are skilled enough and can make the reads well enough that they can create an advantage through an ISO. There aren't many of those players. Those are the 5 reads, and there aren't many 5 read players. If you have one of those 5 read players, you're probably going to be pretty good. Okay, that is your terminology time. Let's debrief it. What did you, if you're taking notes here on your own, write down or think about? What did you like? What did you learn? And what will you improve? We'll go ahead and take a 30-second halftime break for you to write down or think about what did you like, learn, or what will you improve? Music, good stuff. So I just dropped in the chat box there, and I know I'm primarily using this live stream as a way to record this podcast style audio to serve in an ongoing way in our app. But as you do listen live, I would love for you to, if able, respond in the chat, especially at the end of each quarter, with your answers to the like, learn, improve for each of these things. So to remind everybody, we talked through what time you're coaching in, what tense you're coaching in quarter one. In quarter two, we did a terminology review. It's a lot. The terminology is the teaching, which is what's beautiful, in my opinion, about these systems. We went through the first 3 layers of race and space. Now, third quarter, we're going through community questions. All right, excuse me. Third quarter, we're going through community questions. These are questions that I get email, Twitter, or in the hours chat for the community. So let's go to the top. All right. Kevin Krieger, Coach Kevin in Indiana. What is the best practice to push the pace on opponent makes? Kevin said that they had their dragon taking the ball out, but in their case, the dragon was someone in their defense, in their lock left defense. It was up into 9, and since defensively they were out on the perimeter and away from the rim, it took a couple of seconds for them to go get the basketball, so it slowed the transition down to situations. All right, here is the easy fix, Kevin and all. Your dragon must be one of your better defensive rebounders that's nearly always underneath the rim when a shot goes up, attacking the boards. And I'll triple down on this and suggest that ideally your dragon is your bear. Ideally, your dragon is your bear. Maybe your dragon will be your wall, because on defense, especially when switching everything, our goal, this is huge, coaches, our goal is to keep our best rim protector and defensive rebounder by the rim the entire defensive possession. And it's just specialization and keeping players in the places where they're great. So therefore, that kind of determines who your dragon is. And they should be by the rim 95% of the time. In those rare cases that the dragon is not by the rim, then I would down the road free people up that for some reason someone else was like right underneath the hoop when the ball went through the net on a make, not a miss here, but a make. It would be okay for them to grab it and get it out to the racker quickly for speed. So, if the dragon fell down or got pulled out for some reason, or for some reason they flew by on a contest and were running down the court the other way and the ball went in. Like those one-off situations, then someone else on a make only can grab that ball and throw it in. But the reason I don't like saying, hey, anybody near the hoop can throw the ball in is because it battles the habit we're trying to build of bolting, everyone else bolting every single time. So I think that will help you on that one. All right, Julie, California, says, all right, we're not great shooters. In our spring team, how much would you do on tuning your player's shot versus training their shot versus testing their shot at this point in their season? I would probably do this if I'm going by percentages. Let's say, you have 30 minutes to work on shot training in the off season. And if you don't know about the tune, train, test language and whatnot, stay tuned. We actually have our full 28-day shooting system, shot transformation shooting system coming out in May. I was working on that yesterday as well. We actually have a big video shoot to shoot a bunch of new content on the shooting system on Monday, so that we can drip out the 28-day shooting system starting May 1st. You heard it here. I've committed to it. We're doing it. Answered Julie's question. Probably 15, 70, 15 would be off season. 15% of your shooting time on tune-ups, 70% on training, like training your gets, training your reps. I mean, reps win, reps win. You don't need to spend a lot of time on tune-ups if you're focusing on one thing to tune up. and then 15% at the end on testing, so that you've got some data, you can see some improvement and gain some confidence. So 15, 70, 15 would be my answer to you on that one, Julie. Julie also followed up with, what's some technique tips for Zooms? I'm gonna keep it real simple. First, the player next to the ball needs to read the Zoom first. So let's say ball's in the left corner and you got someone in the left attack spot that passed it to the left money spot, the left corner. When they catch the ball in the corner, they're peeking, looking for their advantage. They got a 7, maybe they'll take it. They've got an advantage read, maybe they might hunt it. And so you're staying locked while the ball might hunt. So that first split second, 0.5, they got 0.5 to hunt the advantage. 0.5 to hunt the advantage. If the ball doesn't hunt the advantage with a dribble in 0.5, that's a trigger that they're not going to hunt the advantage. Okay. And so that would then trigger an action. So if your action is determined by an individual, like when Tyler has the ball in the corner and he doesn't hunt, he's zooming out, or if your action is triggered by a spot, anytime the ball doesn't hunt out of the corner, we're zooming out. That would be the trigger, right? A trigger is what starts something. You pull the trigger and it fires. That would be the trigger for the attack spot to move. There's the first technique teaching, Julie, to move towards the ball and inside the arc with their chest to the ball to shorten the pass, give a better angle for the zoom, and to begin to kind of seal and hold off their defender to create an advantage catch. So that's one. It would be the receiver. 2, once the pass is made by the zoomer, the person is going to zoom off the handoff. We want them to use some sort of deception or cleverness. I mean, they could fake away. They could kind of take a step into the defense, like an old school V-cut sort of a thing, right? They could just stand up and relax and kind of like get the defender to relax, but some sort of deception first before they zoom off of it. Next thing, zoom means zoom. The reason I call it a zoom is because when they go, we want them to be going at maximum force and speed coming off of that zoom. There's no faking. They're not going to zoom slowly and rip it back. No. When we zoom, we're going as fast as we possibly can. Right? So they're zooming and sprinting off of it because the zoom isn't necessarily for them. The person with the basketball decides if it's a handoff or a keep, because even if it's not for them, the zoom will create an advantage. It'll create a double wide driving gap, a little moment of confusion, some movement on the backside. That zoom will get to put pressure on the rim with a cut and then an exit cut as well. So that's the next thing. And then the last one would be the read for the person making the handoff. They're actually reading the zoomer's defender. So if the zoomer's defender is trailing the zoom, give them the ball. Even if it's going to be a switch, give them the ball. Give the zoomer the ball. If the zoomer's defender is going under the zoom, keep the ball. Keep the ball, because then that defender is going to actually be like a little ball screen for the person that's holding the handoff, and they can keep it, turn and attack, and there will be confusion. Either the person going under will rub off the on-ball defender, give a straight line drive, or they will double or help on the drive, which then gives you a kick back to the zoomer with an advantage catch, which is what we want anyway. Gosh, zooms are good when executed well. Okay. Jonathan Hinton, would Caitlin Clark be your racker? Yes. Your best player will always be your racker. And yeah, of course, Caitlin Clark would be a great dragon. She'd be a great everything, right? The racker is going to have the ball in their hands the majority of the game. Your best player needs to have the ball in their hands the majority of the game. So the only time your best player wouldn't be your racker is if your best player is a Nikola Jokic type or a Brianna Stewart type, where they're bigger. They're not going to beat people off the dribble in space. They're not fast with the ball. Then you would put them as a dragon, and you would make sure that your rackers are even more reluctant to over penetrate. We want them to take wide open stuff, get the ball in the hands of the dragon. But your racker's your best player. Occasionally your dragon would be, but very few teams, there's not a lot of Nikola Jokic's, right? Very few teams have their best player that's not their primary ball handler. The biggest difference is if you're thinking about Racker, you're thinking about best player, not best dribbler. You're thinking about best player, not, best passer. You're not thinking point guard. You're thinking best player. All right, let's keep it moving on the questions here. Let me bounce over to, we got an off-season development question here. Actually, Ryan has some really good ones here. All right, Ryan, let me scroll to you. I'll be doing the video breakdown, Ryan, and posting it for the shooter. I'll be doing that one in our group chat so everyone can benefit from it. All right. All right, when you do load shooting, Ryan asks, is it still going to be a dip, or is it just right into the lift? Are you past the dip? Okay, good. So load equals dip. Very rarely will a pass be right to the load point for a shooter. The load point is where the ball starts when your hips are at their lowest. When your hips are loaded and the ball's loaded to generate some arm swing to generate upward force into your lift. So dip is just what's required to get the ball to the load point off of passes and off of dribbles. And so I've attempted, because dip has so many negative connotations, I've attempted to, when teaching, eliminate the term dip. Instead, say load, right? But they are the same thing. When players dip, they're just getting loaded. So on load shots, whether you can do load shots an infinite number of ways, and in the shooting system, you guys will see many of them, and create your own, hopefully. When you're doing load shots, all you're doing is getting to your load point from a bunch of different scenarios: dribble, movement, standstill, catch, bad pass, which is the majority of passes in games, so that we can lock in our start and end point. That's what load shots are about. Because if you can lock in and groove the exact same start point and groove the exact same end point, it's going to be really hard to miss shots. Players miss shots in games because of different start points and different end points. And so each shot's a little bit different. So what we're trying to do is eliminate all the different start lines and end points. Load is your start line, your start point, line of the ball, balance of the body, position of the body, position of the ball, position of hands on the ball, position of feet on the ground, all of it, right? Lock it in and you shoot the same shot every time. Similar shot every time, rather. So you are at the dip. Ryan, you asked, are you past the dip? No, a load shot is at the dip, and I'll give you some feedback on your shooter that you sent. All right, and then you've got, okay, I think we got all of yours there. All right, we are now done with quarter 3. Okay, we're kind of doing pretty good on time here. This is an hour. I wasn't sure if we'd fill an hour of just me talking, but I guess I've proven to myself yet again that I can talk for an hour. Hey, thank you everybody for all the questions and engagement. This was honestly my dream when I started Savvy. Was like, man, I was so fortunate to have an impact on the game of basketball through over 20,000 athletes that I worked with over the course of 13 years with PGC basketball, point guard, college. I feel like I had a good impact on the game and was super fortunate. And some coaches would show up as observing coaches. Some coaches, would maybe come to a clinic or something. And my bigger impact, I think, was I got to train the directors that taught basketball PGC. And so there's a big impact on players. And what really lit me up, and I felt like was my calling, was training coaches. And in my case, it was training the PGC camp directors, and then them having ripple effect impact. And I was like, man, what if every practice, if every coach across the world could have some of these tools and teach basketball in this way that lights players up at PGC camps, and that they love it and they are improving like crazy? Why doesn't that happen in team practices across the world? And so really my dream with SAVI Coaching is to provide the same training and better training even than I was able to provide for our PGC directors at camps to teen coaches. And so I'm just honored that there are coaches that are investing in that and that are seeing the results of that and like it and want to keep doing it. So my hope is to continue to have a great impact. I mean, SAVI coaching is not for everybody. Not everybody wants to try on some uncomfortable new clothes, but those that have had some great success. And by success, I don't just mean wins and losses. Wins and losses are just how you keep score. They've had great success because of impact and joy of the process and mastery. And being able to teach the lessons that we want to teach players, both in basketball and in life, a little bit better. So thank you very much for being a part of this thing, and please continue to spread the word, because the gift isn't for us, right? The gift isn't for you. It's only to pass through us. So it always kind of like, I cringe a little bit when coaches are like, "Oh, I don't want to tell anybody else in my area about SAVI." And I'm like, "Ooh, I get it, because you want to win, but the real win is making sure the sport's better." So please share the word. Share the word, and we'll continue to impact the world of coaching together. All right, last one, Q4, personal habit. Ooh, we didn't debrief. Okay, sorry. On the questions, what did you like? What did you learn? And what will you improve based on the questions? I mean, it could be as simple as, man, I just really liked the articulation between dip and load and why. That's helpful to me. Or it could be, oh, I learned how important it is to have our dragon be our best defensive rebounder. Or, I mean, there's so many things. Or, hey, I got to improve how quickly we get the ball out of the net on made shots and get up the floor. All right. Like, learn, improve. We'll do that after every quarter. I think that's a thing until someone tells me they don't like it or we learn a new thing. Q4, final quarter, home stretch. I think we're winning. I think we're winning this game of the Hours podcast. Final quarter, personal habit that I would encourage you to adopt this week. Write nightly. Write nightly. My journal's in the other room. Write nightly. Have you ever laid in bed with your mind racing and not be able to fall asleep? I know the answer is yes, because you're a coach. And I know that the answer is probably yes, even more in the midst of your season, when you have a big game coming up, or you just had a big game, tough loss, big win. Your mind's just racing. One of the best things you can do to get better rest, be healthier, let your unconscious mind work on your problems, is journal nightly before you fall asleep. You know, let's be honest. We do a lot of things to turn our minds off before we fall asleep, especially coaches. Drinking alcohol is one thing that we do to turn our mind off, to relax our body, right? Watching shows, like binge watching shows in bed, to turn our mind off until we can just close this computer screen and fall asleep, right? I mean, there's a lot of less healthy things, or just lay there and think about it. All unhealthy things, both from a rest standpoint and just a mental health standpoint. And one of the best things that we can do, I think, to have more effective and better quality of life and sleep, is to actually instead journal right before you fall asleep. Just have a journal by your bedside. And I'm just going to give you three. I'm going to give you 3 steps to get started on this. Step 1, why? The poet Degas said that thoughts untangle themselves when they pass through lips and fingertips. So my thoughts right now are passing through my lips, like I'm speaking it here on the Hours. It's really good. This is good development for me. Like, I had to prepare for this. I had to think about it. I get to further articulate things that I believe to be true, and unpack things and teach people how to teach it. So that untangles my thoughts when I speak here. All right. So if you have a chance to start a podcast, or I would encourage you to, even if it's just for you. And fingertips is writing. When we write down our thoughts, they untangle themselves in our mind. We'll be able to think about them more clearly. We'll have epiphanies, and it empties your brain and it will let you rest better. So that's one. That's why you should do it. Two, it's really hard to be stressed and anxious when you're grateful. And so I would encourage you to always start your journaling with gratitude. Just write down, start with a list of 3. You don't have to stop there. Just start writing all the things in your life you're grateful for. Your stress, your anxiety will go away. I mean, I'll give you a real example of this. I do some real estate investing. I've got a terrible project going on right now that's taking way too long and costing way too much. It was just like going through my head so hard last night. It's like, how are we going to fix this thing? And so I just, started journaling. I'm like, okay, here's all the things I'm grateful for. And like, I felt the stress leaving my body. And it's really hard to be angry when you're grateful as well. And a lot of times we have anger. So start with gratitude. Just write down 3 things that you're grateful for at night. Okay, here's the third and final thing to do. Okay, write down 2 things that you learned. A lot of times when we're replaying experiences, games, practices, relational things, work things, when we're replaying them over and over in our head, we're not actually learning anything from them. We're just feeling them. We're feeling the emotions of them. But when we shift ourselves from feeling to learning, then we actually examine them in a little bit more detached way, and we find some value in it, right? So like if something really bad happens to us and we just think about how bad it was over and over again, we're feeling it, and we shift to, okay, what can I learn from it? Well, then we assume that, okay, there was some value in this. We assume that maybe it was good for me, and we unpack it, and it helps us close the book on the feeling part of it. We don't have to feel badly about it anymore. All right. Please try it for 7 days. I'm recommitted to spending more time and more consistently journaling again myself. Again, thoughts entangle themselves and they pass through lips and fingertips. 2, start with gratitude. It's really hard to feel negative when you're feeling grateful. 3, write down things you learned from that thing that's keeping you awake. That'll help you close the book on it and move forward. I'm Tyler. This is the Hours. Hopefully, you got a little bit more savvy, a little bit more smart, tough, and clever. I know that I did, and I'm excited to share this one. And we'll talk next week on the Hours.